She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage. She needed to rehabilitate her image.
You and your brother both directly asked your dad not to marry Camilla.
Yes.
Charles read the same line twice. Then he took off his glasses. William stood opposite him. Camilla sat a few feet away, looking at the document before Charles even looked at her. Nobody moved. The fragile page in Charles's hands was more than 20 years old. William had found it 9 days earlier while dealing with a completely unrelated estate matter. Camilla recognized it the moment it appeared on the polished wood. Charles did not. Not until he saw the date, then the signature, then the chilling words typed beneath it. The silence in the room became absolute. The archive anomaly. William was unaware of important details 9 days ago. He was driving to Windsor when he received a routine call from the administrator of an old charity trust connected to one of Charles's community projects. There was no crisis, just a matter of closing an archive store and redistributing its historical papers. Most files could be handled by junior staff, but one could not. The administrator found an original suspension instruction related to Bridge House, a residential training project that Charles had strongly supported years ago. The document had Camilla's signature and a date that William recognized immediately. The administrator sounded uncertain, assuming the king had approved the paperwork, and William thought the same. This was the first issue. William knew Bridge House well. It was not well known or grand. It was a practical project that Charles cared about deeply. It was an old stone building turned into a training site for young people who had struggled in the system, like school dropouts. It taught skills like carpentry, horticulture, stone restoration, and small business management. William and Harry visited Bridge House as teenagers. William recalled the dusty workshop vividly, the sawdust on the floor, thick mugs of tea, and his father being deeply focused on technical discussions about stonework while everyone else waited. He also remembered that Bridge House nearly closed. The family story was straightforward. Charles faced public pressure and almost shut it down in frustration. At the last minute, he changed his mind. Years later, he mentioned it as a personal lesson, saying it taught him not to make permanent decisions when angry. William heard that same story multiple times, which is why the date on the document troubled him. He asked the administrator to read the heading, "Withdrawal and Suspension Instruction." That made William sit up straight. The original closure notice was already prepared. Camilla's instruction didn't cancel it. It ordered a strict 72-hour hold. William asked when the closure was scheduled. It was set for 5 o'clock that afternoon. He then asked when Camilla signed the hold. The time was noted as 3:42 p.m., just 78 minutes before the release. William changed his route and, 2 hours later, was at the archive. He didn't need a tour or a history lesson. He asked for the document. The administrator brought him a fragile page. It had Camilla's name, the date, and a formal instruction to suspend the closure process for 72 hours. It clearly stated that the closure should not return for final release until another option was prepared. William read the document twice. He inquired about the original closure instruction, and a copy was provided. That one had Charles's signature and was signed the evening before. This changed everything. Charles hadn't only considered closing the project, he had signed the order. The decision had turned from emotion into action, and Camilla had stopped it without telling him. The timeline of deception. William placed 2 pages on the archive table. One page had his father's bold signature, and the other had Camilla's. They were signed less than a day apart. William asked the administrator what happened after the 72 hours expired. The trust records were clear. The termination was never released. They quietly discussed a new funding plan. Bridge House continued to operate, and Charles later approved this alternative plan. This part matched what William remembered, but the order of events did not make sense. The family story made Charles pause and reconsider his anger. It showed he chose a different path of his own free will. However, a crucial piece was missing. Charles took action, but something stopped him. Then Charles chose again. William had 2 questions. First, why? Second, why had Charles never known? The archive administrator could not answer these questions. William asked him to place Charles's closure instruction next to Camilla's suspension and to read only the timestamps. Charles signed on Thursday evening. Camilla acted Friday afternoon, just 78 minutes before the release. This timeline was too exact to ignore. It wasn't just an administrative mistake. If Camilla had signed days earlier, she could have been part of a normal staff discussion. If she had signed after the release, she would have reacted to a decision that was already made. But 78 minutes indicated something specific. She acted at the last moment when the order could still be stopped. William asked if anyone told Charles that the release time had passed. The answer was no. The hold took effect quietly. From Charles's point of view, nothing dramatic happened that Friday afternoon. No one came to tell him that his instruction had been blocked. He received no discreet message about Camilla's intervention. The bureaucratic process just halted. This meant that something significant enough to change the outcome remained completely hidden from the man who made the original decision. William took a copy of the page. Before leaving the building, he flipped the documents over to check the distribution marks. Charles's closure instruction was ready to go out. Names and departments were typed beneath it. The suspension stopped this process before the first copy left the trust. This made the 78 minutes feel different. It wasn't just an abstract gap. It represented the distance between a private decision and a public result. Once the closure notice reached staff, partners, and families, reversing it would be no simple task. Damage would be done. William slid the copies into a folder. He still thought there might be an awkward but normal explanation. Then he saw a name repeated throughout the old correspondence. Peter Wren, former trustee secretary, retired and still alive. The keeper of the secret. William called Peter Wren that afternoon. Wren sounded disappointed that a certain subject had survived. William told him what they found in the boxes. There was a long pause, then Wren said, "I wondered if that page would ever come out." William stopped walking. "You knew?" he asked. "Yes." "Did my father know?" There was another painful pause. "No, that was enough." William drove to see Wren, who lived outside Bath. By the time William arrived, the document no longer felt like a mistake. It felt purposeful. Wren did not pretend otherwise. That week, Bridge House faced immense pressure. Costs were rising, and a major newspaper falsely claimed that one of Charles's charitable projects was just a way to get good publicity for himself. Another article dragged William and Harry's private visits into a public argument about Charles's role as a father. The claims were distorted, but Charles read them anyway. Around the same time, a family conversation had gone badly after personal matters reached the press. Wren remembered Charles arriving at a trustees meeting that week, exhausted and furious. Not loud, but his certainty felt worse. He argued that if Bridge House had turned into another place where people, including his loyal staff and sons, were caught up in public arguments about him, the only responsible choice was to shut it down. He wanted the closure executed quickly. William listened without interrupting. The logic seemed noble in a twisted way. Protect innocent people in the project by closing it down. But Wren recalled something else. Charles no longer separated Bridge House from the humiliation surrounding it. He was trying to remove something associated with pain. The official closure notice was signed late Thursday evening. Wren physically took it. The next afternoon, just before it was to be released, Camilla called. She didn't ask whether Charles had signed. Instead, she asked if the instruction had gone out. Wren told her no, not yet. Then she said something significant. "Don't send it." William's expression changed. This was where things looked worst. Camilla knew Charles had made a decision. She knew it had been signed legally. She knew the trustees were about to carry it out. Yet she chose to step in between Charles and his own instruction. William asked what authority she could have. Wren was careful in his explanation. Camilla had no power to overrule the trust. That was why a signed suspension request sat in the files. The trustees could have easily refused her. Wren did not refuse. Why? Because she sounded genuinely frightened. William had expected calculated manipulation, but fright changed the picture entirely. Wren remembered Camilla saying Charles had barely slept for days. He had been angry all week, and every conversation ended with someone telling him what had been written about him, his young sons, or his work. Camilla had tried to convince him not to close Bridge House. He would not listen, so she asked for time. 72 hours. Wren told her he needed something in writing to explain why the signed royal instruction had suddenly stopped. He drafted the suspension request. Camilla signed it, then told him one important thing. If Charles asked why the closure had been delayed, he was to tell him the truth. But unless Charles asked, she did not want her name mentioned. Wren warned her he would not lie to the Prince of Wales. Camilla accepted that. She did not ask him to change the file or hide the closure notice. She only asked for a hold, understanding that the record would show who requested it. This did not make her intervention proper, but it was not as dark or secretive as it might seem. Wren said the trust office had already started preparing for rapid closure. Contracts were being listed, and vulnerable trainees were being assigned to other programs. The decision was serious, not a threat. This is why Camilla's call mattered. It interrupted the process. Wren had asked if Charles knew of her call, prompting a pregnant pause before Camilla replied no. William was intrigued. And he never found out? No, she affirmed. Why? Because by Monday he changed his mind. This revealed a significant contradiction. Camilla halted the order, and Charles later reversed his decision, making the hidden intervention disappear behind a facade of reconsideration. William was initially satisfied by this explanation until Wren mentioned a Saturday morning call. Before Charles sought updated financial numbers on Bridge House, Camilla had reached out to the project director. Shortly after, trustees were working on an alternative structure, highlighting that Camilla had not just stopped the decision, but had actively exploited the pause. William was left with a lingering question. What did Camilla gain? His office investigated but found no hidden roles or financial connections. If her actions were not selfish, then what was her motive? He soon spoke to Helen Marsh, the former Bridge House director. She recalled Camilla's specific request. If Charles returned on Monday and asked if there was an alternative, would there be one? Helen's tentative perhaps wasn't sufficient for Camilla, who desired a practical solution. She wanted a clear plan. The trustees worked frantically to create a reduced version of the original program that would effectively address the issues. When William asked if Camilla wanted to ensure Charles kept Bridge House, Helen clarified that Camilla intended to ensure he had a choice when he was ready. This reshaped William's view of Camilla. Instead of seeing her as someone who maliciously interfered with Charles, he realized she had strategically delayed a legally signed instruction to allow for a viable alternative, while maintaining Charles's autonomy in the decision-making. When William confronted Camilla with evidence of her actions, she recognized it immediately. Camilla admitted to having seen the document before but denied that Charles had. This confirmation deepened William's concerns, as Charles had signed the closure and Camilla had intervened right before it was set to go through. She had effectively orchestrated a plan while preserving the illusion of Charles's independent decision-making. Camilla did not deny any of it when William questioned her decision regarding Charles and Bridge House. She explained that watching Charles navigate a difficult week filled with anger and exhaustion led her to conclude he was not in a rational state to make irreversible decisions. William noted this distinction was one she made for him. When pressed about why she allowed Charles to believe he made the decision himself, Camilla hesitated, revealing her uncertainty for the first time. She had intended to tell him the truth soon after. Still, when the moment arrived, Charles appeared calmer and reassessed the situation with clarity, ultimately choosing to keep Bridge House open. Camilla let his false narrative stand, believing it would benefit him. Over time, the longer she waited to confess, the more she felt she was robbing him of an important belief about himself. On the eve of Charles's formal decision, she almost revealed the truth, but ultimately held back as he approached her with solutions, no longer consumed by anger. Camilla decided to wait until the decision was finalized. Charles expressed relief at having avoided a foolish mistake, and she could have corrected him, but chose not to. This led to further delays, which William pointed out would worsen the truth in the end. Initially, Camilla saw the silence as temporary, only to realize too late how a simple decision could lead to years of deception. William insisted Charles deserved the truth, and Camilla responded by questioning whether William's anger was driving his need to reveal it. She urged him to consider if he was acting out of anger rather than a sense of justice before he took the document from her. As William left, he noted Camilla's stoic demeanor, realizing she had already lost the battle for self-preservation. On his drive, he grappled with a moral dilemma. He could spare Charles painful truths, but he would be acting on the same flawed logic that had guided Camilla. After a brief conversation with Princess Anne, he acknowledged that protecting someone from a bad decision didn't justify hiding the truth indefinitely. The next morning, William resolved to face the facts. The palace goes silent. William called Camilla. He asked her to be there tomorrow, and she agreed. Before the meeting, William decided one important thing. He would not tell Charles that Camilla had made the Bridge House decision for him. That wouldn't be true. Charles had later made the final decision after asking for the numbers and choosing not to close it. What William planned to tell him was more painful. The initial decision had gone further than Charles remembered. It had already been signed and was in progress. Camilla was the one who had stopped it. William didn't need to paint her as a villain. The truth was already harsh. Charles entered the quiet room expecting a normal family talk. He saw Camilla first, then William, and then an old page sitting on the table. He didn't recognize it from a distance. "What's this?" William explained the closure of the archive and the Bridge House papers. He pointed out the date. Charles frowned right away. He did not forget Bridge House. He remembered the week he decided to close it. He thought he had proudly changed his mind. William slid the page across the table. Charles picked it up. He read quickly at first, then stopped when he saw Camilla's signature at the bottom. He reread the date and went back to the top. It stated a 72-hour suspension, a termination notice not to be released, and an option to be prepared. Camilla's signature. Charles read the same line twice and then took off his glasses. The room went silent. William had imagined this moment many times. He thought Charles would be angry, confused, or demand an explanation loudly. Instead, Charles looked at Camilla. "You let me believe that was my decision." Camilla did not soften her reply. "Yes." Charles looked at the paper again and asked if he had already signed the closure. "Yes." "Did she stop it?" "Yes." "Had she secretly arranged for another option?" "Yes." Their short answers left no place to hide. Charles stood up, his voice steady. "What gave you the right?" Camilla met his gaze directly. "Nothing." This surprised him for a moment, not because it made things better, but because she did not offer an easy excuse. She did not say love gave her the right or that the outcome proved her right. Nothing gave her the right, yet she crossed the line. Charles asked why she did it. Camilla explained. He had been tired, humiliated, and angry. He spoke about closing the project as if that would protect everyone from the chaos around him. She thought if he sent out the instruction that Friday, he would spend Monday defending a bad decision made in a moment of anger. Charles glanced at William, who stayed silent. Camilla continued. She did not know if Charles would change his mind, but hoped he would. If Monday came and he still wanted Bridge House closed, the trustees would carry out the instruction. Charles turned back to her. "You would have let it happen?" "Yes." "After stopping me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because then it would be what you truly wanted after your anger had a place to go." Charles's expression tightened. Her statement was both compassionate and insulting. It assumed she could judge which version of Charles was fit to decide. He realized this immediately. "So you made yourself the judge of when I was myself." Camilla accepted the accusation. "For 72 hours. Charles almost laughed, though nothing was funny. William noticed him looking at the old document again. It hadn't taken all power away from Charles, but it had destroyed the story he told himself about how he made his decision. He didn't bravely pause before acting. He acted. Camilla stopped the process. Then he changed his mind. That difference was important to him. Charles didn't ask what happened to Bridge House after that. He knew the project continued and the new model worked, but that didn't answer the big question in front of him. A good outcome didn't change the fact that Camilla had no legal right to make that decision. And a violation of his choice didn't erase that he later made his own choice freely. Charles seemed to grasp both parts at once. He looked at the page, then at Camilla, and asked why she had never told him. Camilla responded quietly. She had intended to tell him, but then Monday came, and he was calmer. He admitted he had almost let massive humiliation take over. He felt relieved he hadn't gone too far. Camilla let the moment pass. Later, he used Bridge House again as a private lesson. The story became a key part of how he understood himself. Each time he repeated the lesson, telling him the truth became harder. Charles listened without moving. "So you chose the memory for me, too?" Camilla briefly closed her eyes. "Yes." This was the deeper wound, not the initial act. It was the years of silence. Each time Charles repeated the lesson, Camilla knew a big piece was missing. Each time she stayed quiet, she decided that he was better off without it. William watched his father, Charles, as he reviewed an important document that now held greater significance. Charles asked Camilla, "Would I have regretted closing it?" She answered, "I thought you would." Their conversation showed a deeper conflict. Instead of blaming each other, Charles tried to understand the complexity of their situation. After Charles left quietly and continued with his public duties, William waited nearly 2 days before looking for answers. When Charles asked for the Bridge House records, he went through the related documents and began to see the missing parts of a story he had believed for 20 years. The next day, Charles met Camilla privately. He arranged the documents in order and asked her, "Were you scared?" Camilla said her fear was about what Charles was doing to himself. She pointed out that his public choices were driven by pride, leaving no space for reconsideration. Charles understood the weight of their choices and the hurt of being deceived. He told her, "You should have told me." And she admitted her mistake without making excuses. As he gathered the papers, he neither tore nor threw away any document. He placed them in an envelope, making sure to keep every part of their difficult history. Camilla watched in silence as he moved the envelope to his side of the table, representing the heavy burden of decisions made in tough times. The palace hides more than wealth. It holds the weight of choices that shape royal history. Share your thoughts. Did Camilla do the right thing by protecting Charles, or did she go too far?